So there's no real mystery to brainwaves. I mean, our brain's job is to create coherence and meaning between what's going on in the outer world and what's going on in our inner world. And so it makes sense then that when we're conscious and we're aware that we're a body in space and time, that we're local in space and time, that we have to use our senses to navigate in three-dimensional reality. So you need your senses, and because they plug you into this world. And if you took away your eyes and your ears and your smell and your taste and your feeling, you could not interact with the outer world. So it makes sense then that as we begin to perceive reality with our senses, there's a lot of information coming into our brain, and we have to organize that information, everything we're seeing and smelling and tasting and feeling and hearing. When that happens, the brain moves into a very kind of fast brainwave pattern called beta brainwave patterns. And it's a kind of a steady brainwave pattern. It's a low idle, and we're probably both in low-level beta right now. If I said to you, Michael, look, I'm going to give you a test, and everything I said, you got to be able to pass the test, you would pay attention a little bit more, and your light bulb in your brain would get a little brighter, and you would move into what's called mid-range beta. Now you're more vigilant, you're a little more focused, kind of a good stress. But when you're angry and when you're frustrated and when you're intolerant and you're impatient, your brain goes into a brainwave pattern called high beta. That's very, very high because the stress hormones are causing the brain to become aroused. So some people get switched on into that high beta pattern, and they have anxiety, they have depression, they have all kinds of mood swings because the brain is now functioning at a higher level, at a faster idle. But when we close our eyes and we disconnect from the outer environment, or we start breathing and we start relaxing, when we start slowing our breath down, our brainwaves slow down, and when we close our eyes and disconnect from the outer environment, or we're driving in our car and we're in trance, our brainwaves move from beta brainwaves to alpha brainwaves. Now in alpha, you're starting to pay attention more to your inner world and not so much all of your attention on your outer world. And now you're starting to get into that realm of imagination. The voice in your head that's always talking to you kind of goes away, and you're kind of seeing in images and pictures instead of sub-vocalizations. So if your body starts to fall asleep and your mind is awake, that's that magic twilight place, that hypnagogue state where we're in theta. And that's a perfect place to really make significant changes because you're conscious in your subconscious mind. Then there's delta, which is restorative sleep. It's when the body is, the brainwaves in the thinking brain are shut way down and the autonomic nervous system is repairing the body. And then there's gamma brainwave patterns, and that's when the brain becomes highly aroused. But the arousal is not coming from a predator in your outer environment. The arousal is coming from within. And we've got so much data to show that when a person goes into gamma, and we now know how to induce that state, the energy from the body is moving into the brain, and it's activating the limbic brain, the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system then sends a very profound signal to the thinking brain. And now the brain waves of gamma are actually faster than beta. And now we're super conscious, we're super aware. The brain is turned on, it's switched on. There's energy in the brain, and all of a sudden you feel more awake, more aware, more conscious. And that's the moment that we really embrace a greater understanding of ourselves and of life. Look, I mean, we spend 70% of the time or more living by some really tough emotions that range from unhappiness to negativity, to fear, to anxiety, to anger, to hostility, to frustration, to envy, to jealousy, to pain, suffering, and guilt. Those are pretty much derived from those stress hormones. And most of the people spend the majority of their life caught up in those emotions. And whether they know it or not, the act of having those emotional responses to something in their outer world or even to a thought in their own mind becomes a little bit of an arousal to the brain. So people get kind of hooked into the emotion and almost addicted to it because it gives their brain and body a rush of energy. So we now know that when a person starts feeling an elevated emotion, an emotion like gratitude or appreciation, joy or freedom or inspiration, that those emotions have a very different effect on the body, a different effect on the immune system, a different effect on the heart. When you're angry and frustrated, your heart beats very incoherently because it's ready to run from a predator or hide from a predator or fight a predator, but no one's running or fighting or hiding. And so it's like stepping on your gas pedal and your brake at the same time. It starts to create a lot of incoherence in the heart, and the heart has its own little individual brain. So then we teach students then how to regulate an elevated emotion and create more coherence in the heart, and we measure it. And when the heart starts beating more coherently, more in an organized fashion, it sends a very clear magnetic field away from the body. That field, that energy, is a frequency, and all frequency carries information. So then a person, when they feel the elevated emotion, they're creating their bigger field, they're becoming more energy and less matter. And the intent that they have, the thought that they're thinking, is being carried on that frequency. And now they're broadcasting a different field of information and light around their body. And they're tuning into a potential that already exists in the quantum field. And if they're doing it properly, they're investing their attention into the future. They're changing their energy. They're changing their brain. They're changing their neurochemistry. They're changing their circuitry. They're changing their genes. They're changing their protein expression. And their brain and body are living in a future present reality instead of the past present reality. And the repetition of that over time begins to change a person's state of being. And now they belong to their future instead of belonging to their past. René Payache is a physician from France and a researcher, and he took day-old baby chicks, and day-old baby chicks like to imprint and bond on a mother hen. But instead of using a mother hen, he dressed up a robot as a baby chick, and he let them imprint on this robot. Now, the robot was a random event generator, which means a random event generator is like a coin toss. 50% of the time, the robot's going to turn to the right, and 50% of the time, the robot's going to turn to the left. So if you put it in a caged arena and you let the robot go and you were to map where it would move through the arena, it would cover pretty much the entire arena equally. It would spread out. But when he took those baby chicks and he set them on one side of the arena in a cage, and the moment those baby chicks saw the robot, thinking it was their mother, their intentions and their thoughts and the emotions drew the random event generator to that side of the cage 100% of the time. So the fundamental question is, if 1 day old or 3 day old baby chicks can influence a random event generator to move to that side of the cage with those tiny little brains and small little hearts, imagine what you and I can do when we get clear on an intention and we begin to combine it with an emotion. So we've done experiments where we've taken students and we've had them wear heart rate monitors. 50 of them in the front of the room and 750 people in the rest of the room. And everybody else in the room would call up an elevated emotion, feel that elevated emotion, sustain it, then broadcast it beyond their body, and then lay the intent, the thought on that energy for the greatest good of everybody wearing the heart rate monitors in the front of the room, that their lives be enriched, that their bodies be healed, that the mystical find them, that their dreams be manifested and realized, and do that just for 10 minutes. Well, it's kind of interesting that so many people go into heart coherence that are wearing the heart rate monitors at the exact same time, on the exact same day, in the exact same meditation, which means then everybody's influencing those people's autonomic nervous system in a very remote way. So every person then that's receiving that energy, is their autonomic nervous system is being influenced, and that person that goes into heart coherence should influence every person in their life that they're connected to, and should create more heart coherence in every single person. And of course, then that's a great way to change the world. So we've done these peace gathering events where we've had over 40,000 people participate, and that's exactly what we do. We're doing the same thing for the planet, and it only takes a small percentage of people on this planet to sustain a certain level of coherence that should begin to, over time, affect everybody. And if there's any time in the world that we need that, I think now is the time. So it's a very ambitious ideal, but what else is there to do?